This life right now is requiring our courage, is it not? Is it not? I want to start off by saying thank you. I want to say thank you to all of you who sent such kind messages of condolences to me and my family. My mother-in-law, Alice Hakim, made her transition. It will be 2 weeks tomorrow. And that is a 34-year-long relationship. Alice continues to be, above all else, an absolute lover of music, all things musical. And I know that she is bringing her love and her joy with her coloratura soprano voice on the other side of life in the very same way that she brought it to us here. And the reason I'm sharing this with you is because at the very same time that my mother-in-law was in the process of making her transition, my sister began to have contractions and was getting ready to give birth. And she hasn't yet given birth. I may be leaving right after this talk. We'll see. Hang in there, Kelly. You're doing great. But literally, during that process, every single time I got a text on my phone, I did not know if it was a text letting me know that my mother-in-law had died or that my newest baby nephew was getting ready to be born. And this brought me to a place of very deep reflection about these two seemingly opposite things, life and death, and how we are called to live in the divine balance of all of it. And so what I want to offer you today are some thoughts that came to me around this idea of this holy balance that we are asked to live in as humans. You know, how we navigate the texts of life, if you will, that can really bring such seemingly opposing things. However, sitting from the highest perch of observation, the spiritual truth is that really these seeming opposites are two sides of the very same coin. And therein lies the rub of being human. You know, there's a lot of humaning going on, isn't there? I just made that up. A lot of humaning. Just recently, I read in the New York Times that the very last telephone booth was removed. Yes. There were interesting rumors that there was a few others floating around being like heavily protected. I don't know about that. But really, you know, they did a whole ceremony, the whole thing. It was officially like the last official telephone booth was removed. And this got me thinking because, you know, since the advent of the cell phone, we now have every single thing, every moment of the day at our fingertips. And this can feel very overwhelming, very out of balance, actually. You know, really looking back on it, those of you who remember payphones, they were lovely things, weren't they? Oh, they were of course, we didn't know it at the time. We didn't realize it at the time. We totally took them for granted like we do most things. But truly, they were such a blessing. You know, you had to have a dime, and then when we got older, it was a quarter. Remember? You had to have it in your pocket or in your wallet. We didn't have ATM cards. Remember that? That came even later. You know, when the phone booths, you had to have a reason, an actual reason to call someone, and they would actually pick up the phone. You could step into a phone booth, and you would close the door, and you would have this privacy kind of in the middle of a busy street. And it was socially acceptable because you were enclosed. You weren't, you know, walking down the street with an invisible headphone in your ear, talking out loud to seemingly no one. We understood you were in a phone booth. It was quiet. And you got to have an actual conversation with someone, uninterrupted, focused time. In those days, we would have an actual genuine reason to call, And you wouldn't usually call from a payphone just to chat, although, you could. But often for that, you would wait until you got home, and you would call someone, and sometimes you would actually get a busy signal. Remember those? Seems very funny now. My point in all of this is that where we are today with our technology, the times that we're in now, everything has become so immediate, so immediate. Everything happens at once, access to the news all around the world at the same time, all the things, all the headlines, and it can feel very overwhelming and out of balance. And then compound that, and this all in our lifetime, by the way, which is why I wanted to share that about the phone booth. Compound that with the experience of COVID that we've all been, moving through for the past several years. And we're going to call it COVID because that's absolutely what it is, but it's so much more than that. COVID unearthed all the shadows, didn't it? All the shadows from our individual selves and our collective experience all over the world. When we were in lockdown, we were forced to look at all of it. Ourselves, our marriages, our friends, our communities, our government. And that time, that hard and sacred and important and confusing and holy and painful time, showed us and continues to show us all the places that are calling for love and all the places that are out of balance. And for so many people, this time has been a catalyst for great change. Think about your circle of people. Think about your circle of friends, how the last few years so much has shifted and changed. This time has impacted our relationships. Again, our marriages, our partnerships, our jobs, our careers. So many people have made very, very profound shifts and changes as a result of this time that we have been in. There has been this deep reckoning of what we as individuals deeply want to experience in our life. And while this awareness is a very good thing, all of this upheaval has caused imbalances, both individually and collectively. The sheer amount of loss, of human loss that we have experienced has created that. And on a more global and a more sort of collective level, all of that shadow that is being unearthed right now is being unearthed in the areas of women's rights and LGBTQIA rights and voting rights and the need for gun reform and social justice for people of color. All of it has been unearthed. This very, very, very important stuff that is coming up to be released and transformed is creating a great deal of imbalance in its wake. That is the nature of transformation. But my friends, we are here for it. Yes? 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 All right. Sometimes I'm like, seriously, God, this is what I signed up for? Really? Then I have to stop and say, absolutely, yes, and more yes. And I know that it can feel like a lot. Here is what I have to offer. There is an ancient Buddhist saying that goes, tend the part of the garden you can reach. Tend the part of the garden you can reach. It doesn't say, tend to your own private garden. And it doesn't say, tend to the entire garden. It says, tend to the part of the garden you can reach. Tend that part. This is the call. This is the call that you and 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 I have been brought here to do. This is our call. And it can be different for everyone. This reach is different for everyone. But doing this will help prevent the overwhelm that I just laid out, right? I'm going to share with you a couple of ways. So, if you can focus on the part of the garden that you can reach in whatever way that is for you, it will not only support you individually, but it supports the collective human family. And if each of us is doing our part, then our garden will be tended too. And there are many ways to do this. I know there have been folks who have been marching, and there have been folks who have been canvassing and making calls. And there will be more ways in this community and in our global collective to take a stand, to show up in ways that are in absolute alignment with our spirituality. That is, in fact, the directive of our spirituality as people of faith in this community. We started just last week collecting signatures for a very important initiative here in Oregon to help stop gun violence. For those of you watching or listening online, if you do not live in the state of Oregon, please go to everytown.org and do your part. That's one way that you can tend to the part of your garden. You can reach that place wherever you are in this world. We're going to be collecting more signatures. Thank you again, Rev Sally, for doing that. We're at about our halfway mark-ish, so be sure to do that. Another thing we can do to tend to our part of the garden is to put our money towards tending the things that we stand for. You know, here at our spiritual center, 10% of everything that is collected is given to the organizations that are living our spiritual values out in the world. So, for example, I'm going to be asking our beloved tithing committee, thank you again, you dear ones on that particular team, I'm going to be asking them to give a portion of the funds that are collected this month to go to an organization that is working to end gun violence and protect our country's children in that way. I'm also going to be asking during this time of Pride Month to request that some of your money, of our money here and online, go to LGBTQIA organizations that are dedicated to protecting and supporting those in need in that community. So there are ways that you can give in whatever way works for you. Habitat for Humanity, whatever it may be. I'm inviting you into a conscious spiritual practice of giving. In that way, you can also tend to your part of the garden. You know, I saw something on social media from Cory Booker, who I follow, and he shared a story about this very thing, just in a different way. He shared a story. He was at a funeral recently. A good friend of his made his transition, and he had a brother who was just 18 months apart. And in the Jewish tradition, babies that are born that close are considered to be half of a whole. So it's a very big deal. In my culture that I grew up, I am an Irish twin. My brother Michael is just 16 months apart from me. Any of you who have that experience, you understand there's a bond that, your baby's in the playpen together. There's a bond, an ancient memory that you have somewhere inside of you, and it's a big deal. And so this brother had passed. Cory Booker was friends with both of them and was attending the funeral. They were at the gravesite. And as the brother is laying him to rest, and each of the attendees at the funeral are placing dirt, per that tradition, onto the casket, the brother just quietly slipped away. And Cory said, I don't think anybody even saw him, but he just quietly slipped away as they were paying their respects and putting dirt on the casket. And he noticed that there were a group of a few people off to the side, kind of far away, dressed differently, as he said, not dressed for a funeral, and assumed to be most likely workers in that area, and may have even dug the grave of his brother. And this man just very quietly went off, and Cory noticed that he shook their hand, and he talked to them, and he looked like he was thanking them. And then he pulled his wallet out, and he gave them money to say thanks even more, and then just quietly came back. That is tending to the edge of our garden. It's another way. We can all look up and look out. And as we do that, we are served. For that brief moment, what I can tell you is that man forgot his grief. because he was caring for and being of service to others. So being of service in whatever way is a very, very powerful way to create balance. He brought balance to the grief that he was feeling in that moment. Einstein encouraged us to widen our circles of compassion. And that's really what this is. In doing this, in looking up and out, in tending to the edges, we bring balance into our lives. We can't not. I'm curious. I want to invite you to consider what area in your life you might be able to look up. Where can you look to the edge of your garden and give of yourself, your time, your talent, your treasure? Where can you do that in your life? In doing it, it will bring more balance. It will bring more balance. In this life, it is always so interesting to me because the sort of conundrum of being human, and it is a conundrum, is that we are asked to hold both light and shadow simultaneously. Right? And this, of course, is our walk. And it's tricky. It's tricky, this balance. Think about it for a moment. We cannot laugh about something that is funny and cry about something that is sad at the exact same time, at the exact moment. Of course not. Sometimes one precedes the other. Laughter can actually turn into tears. Have you ever experienced that? It's so incredible when that happens. You know, it's so moving. It's moving to witness as well. We cannot be angry and laugh at the very same time, and yet sometimes anger turns into laughter. Have you ever experienced that? You know, you say something or you're hearing something that's being said in anger and it's so ridiculous, you both start to just completely laugh. I love it when that happens. What a gift. I love that we humans can do that. But we cannot in the very same instant be sad and happy, be angry and laugh. One always precedes the other, even if they are a nanosecond apart. We see this in grief. People talk to me all the time about the waves of grief. And we, as a nation, I think, as a world, have been in a state of grief. Of one kind or another, of one level or another. That is what COVID brought us. Grieving the loss of the old, even if it's just that, you know? My daughters and I were around the table the other night, and we were feeling sad. I was feeling sad. I was missing Alice. And then we started sharing our favorite memories of her, and this brought happiness. And such is life. It goes back and forth and back again. And so, for balance, my friends, realizing that yes, there is challenge, and yes, there is difficulty, and yes, this is part of life, and there is a divine call within each one of us to seek out in a healthy way that balance, that which brings us happiness, and that which brings us joy, whatever that may be. And this is key. The key thing about the idea of bringing the joy is to do it from a place of conscious awareness, of mindfulness, and of self-care. We forget that a way that we can engage in self-care is consciously cultivating that which brings us happiness and joy into our lives. I think we miss that. I talked a little bit about it a few weeks ago, but what I discovered is that sometimes when there is tragedy, when there is difficulty, there is a tendency of us sensitive, compassionate humans to feel guilty, maybe, to want to do something that's going to make us happy. And now I'm not talking about, in any way, shape, or form, not feeling the pain. Remember, I always say we must feel it to heal it, right? We have to name it to transcend it. We have to feel it. But to bring in the balance is to also bring in the joy, and to do that unapologetically. Unapologetically. I can tell you right now that when I was sitting at that dining room table with my daughters and we were all feeling sad, when we started talking about the happy memories of Alice's spirit was singing for joy. That is our call here. That is our call here. Bringing mindfulness to the process of uncovering and discovering and celebrating joy. And when we create the room to do this, even in the midst of sorrow, it is healing, and it is a spiritual choice. Anne Frank wrote, "I don't think of all the misery, but of the beauty that still remains." The beauty that still remains. In our teaching here in New Thought, we understand the spiritual principle of what we focus on increases. And so right now, clearly, what we are focusing on is being a catalyst for change in our country. Yes? This is a huge, huge piece of our holy and sacred work that is before us. And this is very important for us to focus on. But it is also equally important for us to focus on that which brings us joy and happiness. So what is that for you? I'm seriously inviting you to think about it. Think about what is it that you can do today that is going to bring you more joy. It's different for everyone. Go do that. Go do that, because that brings balance. That helps to even the scales of everything that we're moving through. Let's bring more God through this joy, more spirit, into our world. Pierre Teilhard de Chardin wrote, "Joy is the infallible sign of the presence of God." Joy. Joy is the infallible sign of the presence of God, or spirit, or source, or quantum consciousness, or mother, or whatever word you want to use. This is a quintessential aspect of having balance in our lives. Lastly, I want to just bring in to this conversation that I think for me feels kind of like the cherry on top of this idea of balance. Most of us have heard the concept of creating work-life balance, yes? Creating family-work balance. The idea that family is over here, and work is over here, and life is over here, whatever that is. We've been raised kind of in this most recent generation to treat each of these as very separate components to our lives. And I think it was a good thing for the time, because it helped to create healthy boundaries. It really helped solidify the boundaries of our life. However, the cost of that, the trade-off has been separation. It's been the separation of these things. And the more that I dug into this, in the same way that I was waiting for those texts between death and birth, and what we teach here is that there is no separation, right? It's all love, and an expression of love, or a call for love. But separating these things, work, life, family, compartmentalizing them, put these very beautiful, important aspects of our lives in separate boxes. So here's my question. What if we take it a step further? What if there's a new iteration of this? What if there is a new thought? Boom, boom. That's even better. What if instead of work-life balance, we think of it as work-life integration? The definition of the word balance is an even distribution of weight enabling something or someone to remain upright and steady. The word integration, however, means the act or process of uniting different or separate things. What if We proclaim integration within ourselves as the holistic path to balance in every area of our lives. And I think that if we are living from a place of mindfulness rather than mindlessness, hence walking down the street, talking on the phone, blah, 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 blah. If we become mindful, paying attention, allowing ourselves to notice and to be so fully present to that which is occurring in our work life, in our family life, in our hobby life, in our spiritual life. If we begin to bring mindfulness to it, we begin to integrate those things. One of the ways that you can bring mindfulness to your relationship, to your partner, to work, to anything, I'm going to give you this quick tool. Notice 5 new things about your person or your child or your pet or your spiritual community or your person you work with. Notice 5 new things. In doing that, you are bringing mindfulness to that moment. And when you bring mindfulness to that moment, you are capable of integrating. When we bring mindfulness to anything, we can't be separate from it. You might discover some very new things about your person, you know? Another way of looking at it, our social justice work here isn't separate from our faith tradition. I talked 2 weeks ago about this idea that eventually spirituality and science are not going to be separate. They are going to be the same thing, completely informing that. And as that is going to happen out in the world, it must first, of course, happen within us. That all of it is integrated within us. You know, the way that we partner or parent or work or pray or tend to the part of our garden isn't separate from the way that we live our spiritual life because it is all holy. It's all connected. Our relationships are holy. Our parenting is holy. Our work is holy. It's all part of the one. It's all the same thing. And really claiming this and beginning to walk in this direction brings incredible balance because it inherently is integrating. Nothing is cut off. Nothing is siloed. The way we show up at work is the same way that we can show up for our loved ones. And we can show up for our prayer chair or our meditation cushion or our walk with our beloved fur babies. Or the ways in which we notice the grave diggers at the edge of our garden. It is never this or that. We have been thinking all this time that to create balance in our life, we have to manage this over here and that over there. No. It's here. It's all right here. That is true balance. That is living life in God, in love, in source, in spirit, in integration. It's not birth and death. It is living in the balance and integrating all of it. So this week, my friends, I invite you to tend to the part of the garden you can reach by giving of your time, your talent, and your treasure. I invite you to consciously bring joy as an act of self-care and spiritual practice into your life. Cultivate that. And I invite you to begin to look at the ways in which you can integrate or bring together all of the various aspects of your life so that you can live in the place of a procured, conscious, harmonious peace. Hi, friends. I hope that our message inspired you today. I want to give you an opportunity to pay it forward. We are able to do all that we do here. We're able to get this message to you wherever you are in the world based on contributions. We're a nonprofit. And so I wanted to give you an opportunity to do that, to pay it forward. You can click the link in the description box below or go to our website. No amount is too small or too big. We are so grateful. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in. Know that you are loved. Mwah. Have a good week.